Great sunrise, sunny people. I hope all is well with you as it is with me on this day. I'm afraid I might have to do part two on this video, but it's going to be a good one. And for all you songbirds out there, my only request is that you will sing. Bring love back to our community as a people because it has been destroyed. And one thing that doesn't cost money or that money can't buy is your singing in harmony and in love with all your might. So, with that said, my introduction song is by Stevie Wonder. Oh, 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 we have to get close. Make sure that you know power from your heart and love. Don't hold back your feelings. That's another reason. When it's straight from your heart. It doesn't matter. I know more than I didn't need to put the good heart fire for love passion. With the just roses, make sure that you know it's the power from your heart. So when you're done, don't hold back your feelings. When it's straight from your heart, I know that people say two heartbeats and that's one is unreal and can only make me so happy. What they for that has the miracles of love. Sorry, your love, so that you feel when it's coming from your heart. Oh, 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 they come straight from the heart. So can you love? Don't forget your feelings. Give them your love. Na 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 na. Yes, yes, Stevie. Okay, today's video is where I try to convey to you how much in a circle we have gone as a people and how we continue to get tricked by the enemy. Uh, we allow so much calamity in our world when our world is different, but we get tricked constantly into colliding our worlds together, only to be blamed for the downfall because the downfall is put all upon the degradation that has been opposed upon us. And I'm just trying to show you that how our lack of really understanding of what went on in the past and how we need clarity, how important clarity is on this. Even though they're the record keepers, they've done some trickery. They mixed truth with lies. So let's get started with the video. First, I'm going to share this video before I get into the calamity. This video is about comedic ethics, and it speaks on humanity still in dark ages.
Full-fledged Third World War, even with nuclear war and with the possibility of a multipolar world emerging after this conflagration, then something hit me with an interesting realization. I was being influenced to think that way, and I was being pushed back to think like a human being in the dark ages. Guess who was the culprit behind that? It is very clear that to be civilized is a challenge. And generally, to be civilized means to be cultured, to be cultivated, to be refined, to be civil, to be educated, to be polite, to be polished, to be mannerly, to be sophisticated, and to be enlightened. So to speak, in our Bantu language, to be civilized is to have Ubuntu or Maati or Unu. When you look at humanity,
I wanted to stop there because we can see where the white man in this society that has colonized America, let's be honest with ourselves, he has colonized America, the Europeans, and made it into what world they wanted to make it into. And in that colonization, we must remember they did have the Dark Ages in Europe, and we know the Maroons went over the Kemetic priesthood went over and gave them science, gave them arts, gave them so much information, knowledge. And to me, that goes back to the garden and the snake, the devil, what they call the devil, giving knowledge, which it was the snake, which was the black man, coming in and introducing human power, empowerment to these people, not animalism, taking them out from animalism and giving them humanity. That's what we call humanity. But as we see, I wanted to reflect upon what the video was saying at this moment. It was talking about what it takes to be civilized. They evidently know what it takes to be civilized. So they play both ways. They have the civilized way that they use, but it's a selfish one because they give everybody else, they use the inhumanitarian ways for their own benefit, as you're going to see.
It is still far from being civilized. Maybe a few people here and there, but the general mass, including the leadership, is sliding back into the dark ages because they've left Maati, which is truth, justice, balance, law, and order. And they've embraced Isfet, broken Maati in the process. Isfet is evil, disharmonious, troublesome. Isfet can only be overcome by doing good, not by preaching or by philosophizing about doing good. A thinker here, Morgan, classified civilization in 3 steps. He said it starts with savagery, barbarian, and then it becomes civilized. So when you look at the world and this civilization today as led by Europeans and the Asians in this so-called modern society, and the age of reason, the Enlightenment has produced wars and mayhem, savagery. Why? Because there are a number of proofs that shows that medieval Europe, as well as the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages, produced First World War and Second World War, because the spirit of the Dark Ages was still amongst those that are leading or those that took over the leadership and reign of the whole world, proving that humans are still primitive and they are sliding back into the Dark Ages, where animal instincts and overly boasts and destruction rule all over and destroy enlightenment. War and conflict, discrimination and racism, despite all the universities that we have in this world and all the education that people have imbibed, we are still stabbed and filled with racism, hate, and discrimination. There's poverty in a universe of plenty. And the Judeo-Christian mentality that is supposed to be inspirational is not doing anything to change this slide back in anarchy. And there's the environmental destruction, corruption, violence and crime, lack of education for others and healthcare for others. There's a lot of human trafficking and slavery, modern slavery, and the abuse of power by those that are in authority. And generally, all humanity lack empathy. Like my feelings that I had when I was watching the Battle of Bakhmut, I should have been feeling for the innocent, for the children, for the men and women that have nothing to do with what the Vladimirs are doing against each other. So lack of education is a global issue. Human trafficking is a big problem. Abuse of power is all over the shore. And empathy. Imagine the slave trader, Arabic slave trader, and the European slave trader. He had no empathy for the people that he was putting in chains and whipping to the cost. Despite centuries of progress and technological advancement, humanity is still engaged in wars and conflict that result in tremendous loss of life and destruction. Why? No sociologist or psychologist or thinker has asked this question seriously, because there are gods, religious spirits that are in possession of humanity, almost all human beings that are living on the earth, to become cheerers of warmongering attitudes, to love pain. Like when you look at our sports, wrestling, boxing, any sport, even hunting, spirit of hunting, which comes through athletics, disc and javelin throwing, all those are signs of the emotional traps that we have of our animal instincts to cause trauma. So you win and your opponent loses and you become excited about that. And to cause unnatural death through wars, accidents, machines, and poisons and foods. So we are not yet there. We are still in the Dark Ages. Billions today are engaged in worshipping of deities and gods. And when you look at these gods, they thrive in sacrifices. And sacrifices cause pain and emotional trauma, whether it's for a bird, whether it's for a goat, whether it's for a human being, whether it's only for your sacrifice of time or sacrifice of your effort. Human sacrifice is painful. To expect that you can have another spirit today other than that of sacrifice, and hopefully.
So, the voodoo religion, I wanted to get into that and how they have taken that, because I've heard them talk here on YouTube about voodoo, white people talking about voodoo, and how it contributes to child sacrifices. But you're going to see later on in my video here where exactly that comes from. It doesn't come from our ancient of ancients because we never worshipped anything and we never had to sacrifice to anything. But I tell you this, we live in a place that the Bible says is the wicked rules the air. So that wickedness is Dolobroth, the half created. It's the same God over Christianity, the same God over the Muslims, the same God over all religions in the earth, because this was built by the Europeans. The Europeans have taken voodoo and made it like all the other religions. They made it into a religion because voodoo was never a religion. The voodoo I do, because I have learned and recognized what the Europeans been showing me all of this time, all these years, I use to my benefit the education I do receive from them, and that we are powerful people, and we embody that, and we have to connect to that. That's what the Superman is about, connecting to your higher powers, knowing that you don't have no God that you have to worship, bow down to, drink his blood, eat his skin. You don't have to sacrifice anything for that power. You have it. You just have to utilize it. And it comes from within. It is nothing, and it comes from your whole embodiment of your greatness. And really, really knowing that to be true. And not the latter of what they say. Because if you believe the latter, then you cannot make anything happen. We cannot make it happen thinking on this lower level that we're thinking, that we live in. Blood, the level of blood, of redness, the color red. Red rum, just to be funny. Let's get started.
That the slide towards the dark ages will vanish is mere ignorance. Because look at this. Human sacrifice is still going on today. When you understand what happens inside the Bohemian Grove, where elites and educated people with PhDs and billions of dollars and industry retreat for secret rituals that are linked perhaps even to human and child sacrifices, then you realize that we are sliding back into the medieval periods. Discrimination and prejudice based on race, on gender, on religion, or sexism, or any other factor is still prevalent in many parts of this world, due largely to male-dominated religions. When we read the Bible here, it says, "Let women be silent in churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under the obedience, and also, saith the law. And if they will learn anything, let them ask their husbands at home. For it is a shame," listen to this, "for it is a shame for women to speak in the church." This was said by Paul, who was inspired by the Holy Spirit in the Bible. And then you find in churches there are women there. They don't even look at this. They don't read these verses. They can't see that they are in a male-dominated spiritual system. And now, on the other hand, the same Bible says, "And it was not Adam who was deceived, but the woman who was deceived, and they fell into transgression." And this verse alone has caused a lot of pain injury, discrimination for the woman, whether talented or not talented. They would be discriminated against because people would come and say the Bible or God said that you are a sinner, you are the one who caused us to sin. You might think that perhaps Islam is better and that you might go and read the Quran. But if you read the Quran 4:34, it says, "And as for those women whose ill will you have reason to fear, admonish them first, then leave them alone in bed, then beat them." Then here you see in the brackets here, because there has been a lot of problems with this, beat them lightly. It doesn't say that. So this inequality is there even in Islam. Despite this earth that is full of a lot of products, the few that are rich, the 1% that control almost everything, and all of our professors with PhDs in economics and global bankers that can know everything, and over $30 trillion of physical cash floating all over the earth, poverty and suffering for the majority rules the day. There are no efforts to eradicate poverty and promote equality. They love to see billions of people living in squalor and poverty. And the small steps that have been taken to regulate and to make life easier have been eradicated, and we are sliding back into the medieval period because Isfet rules. Some calculations that have been done predict that global poverty could be eliminated if the richest nations in the world were to invest only 1% of their combined wealth. They can do it, but they can't because they are ruled by Isfet and they are blinded by evil. Corruption is rampant in many countries, undermining democratic institutions, the rule of law, and the basic rights of any citizen. Here is what Frank Herbert Dune said: "All governments suffer a recurring problem. Power attracts pathological personalities. It is not that power corrupts, but that it is magnetic to the corruptible." Why do we have geniuses who make intricate machines but are utterly useless to solve these challenges and actually possessed by behavior of humans that are still in the dark ages? What are the reasons? The reasons why we have geniuses who can make intricate machines but struggle with solving complex societal issues are multifaceted. One reason is that the skills and expertise required to solve these issues are different from those required to develop complex machines. Additionally, geniuses or leaders as individuals are still trapped by deeply ingrained beliefs and biases that prevent them from exploring systems that will reduce the severity of the problems that are engulfing humanity. How do these individuals get filled with these deeply ingrained belief systems or biases that prevent them from acknowledging the severity of certain problems or recognizing the need for change? It is because of the fact that there is a process of socialization, technology, and power dynamics. These are three major issues out of many. Socialization is a process where your schooling, where your religion, your groups or clubs that you associate yourself with formulates your culture, your work ethics, and especially the fundamentals that were laid to this civilization by the Judeo-Christian of the Dark Ages still persist, including the Muslims who considered other people like black people as inferior. So socialization is one of the greatest enemies. Artificial intelligence. Advances in artificial intelligence under the spirit of the Dark Ages has led to the development of autonomous weapons and the displacement of human workers. Therefore, there is a greater risk that artificial intelligence may become uncontrollable and they will eventually turn against a section of humanity and eventually will turn against the whole race. If you read the Washington Post, quoted here, shown here, on racist robots, artificial intelligence, it says, as part of a recent experiment, scientists especially programmed robots, tested them to scan, to block people's faces on them. Then they put criminal in the box. The robots repeatedly chose black people with black faces as criminals. Over and over again, the robots responded to words like homemaker and janitor by choosing blocks with the women and the people of color. Researchers in recent years have documented multiple cases of biases put in intelligence machine via algorithms. This includes prediction algorithms that unfairly target black and Latino people for crimes they did not commit, as well as facial recognition systems that have a hard time to identify people of color. Bias in word association. It was found that European names were perceived as more pleasant than African or African American names. There is also bias inbuilt in online advertisement. This was even proved by a former Harvard researcher and a former chief technologist of the Federal Trade Commission. Very, very, very interesting. Bias in criminal justice system. Danger of facial recognition racial bias. There is a system in America known as the Correctional Offender Management Profiling for Alternative Sanctions algorithm, which is used by judges to predict whether defendants should be detained or released on bail pending trial. It was found that this machine was biased against African Americans, despite that we are in the Enlightenment age or the age of reason. There is also the issue of power dynamics. Power dynamics implies that people with power rarely feel for those that they have power over. Overall, deeply ingrained beliefs or biases are impossible to overcome because they are not human-driven, but are largely inspired by forces beyond the physical realm, the reptilian, the evil, or the devil. Just as those that are involved in artificial intelligence development, they do not acknowledge or know, or maybe they know that there is a ghost in the machine, and the ghost in the machine is similar to the mindset a witch or someone with ill intent will have to create a machine or a system that will annihilate their perceived or actual enemies. This is the human consciousness that is driving those that are in lead today through power dynamics. So it is time for you to save your soul so that you do not slide into the mentality of the dark ages. You need to cleanse your mind, to remove the Chitauri's influence, and to love no pain of war or pain of any sort on anybody. You can do that simply by living Mahati and using Isfet sparingly. If you are interested in this, send us an email, join at Marifado, your manager to P. saying, yes, we can stop the slide back to the medieval or the dark ages. Subscribe to our channel, share, and leave a comment. Till we meet again. Salani kahle. Siyabonga. Tatenda. Asante sana. He is known by so many names. Mephistopheles, Baphomet, Lucifer, this, also called Apopipa, Apep, Shatter, the god Seth, Rereko, and in ancient Kemet, he was the popular figure for demons, evil spirit, chaos, and he came as a serpent, a wily serpent in ancient times.
Sorry about that. Okay, that didn't take long. Now let's look at this next video. I didn't want to go into that one, but it kind of melted on into that one. Let's go on to the next video. Why Egypt collapsed.
Here on Calamity Hebrew Ethics Production, as we deal with this civilization. If you are passionate about your original African identity, reactivating ancient African ancestral solutions to modern problems, igniting that feared giant lulled to sleep by other religions and spiritualities, walk with the creator of your and our ancestors, hit the subscribe button, visit our website, Our Life Spirit of Amenhem, comment and share. This is our time. Calamity Hebrew Ethics, Priest Teacher Rabbi Edem Ademuzulu. How did the greatest civilization of Black Egypt fall? What really happened? Egypt's real name, there is no doubt that of the 6 ancient African earth-changing civilizations which fertilized the earth, the 7th, that of ancient Egypt, among many others, is the greatest and is luminary today. The name Egypt is a Greek derivation of Aegyptos. The Egyptian proper name is Wataka Ptah, which means mention of the spirit of Ptah. And Ptah is an architect or
Yes, because when you talk about the word Pharaoh, it means house. So, and Pharaoh is a Greek word, just like Cleopatra is.
or craftsman or creator or the netter for being creative. This is the original name of the first ancient Egyptian capital, Memphis, called Mamfa or Mamofa, which is how Africans would pronounce it. This part of Africa also was known as Hemet, from where we derive Hamiti, meaning a black land or the land of black people. Other Africans call their homeland or this homeland Misraim, which simply means Muziraumwe, or one way or one route, referring to the direction or unique direction of the flow of the river Ahapki, so-called Nile. These are the ancient Egyptians. They don't look like any other race. They are Africans, and these are their achievements. How did Africans achieve such a high civilization? Humanity's only divine covenant is known as Mahati, which is shown here, or the divine laws of harmony. And this is the Egyptian for Mahati. This is A, and this is T, and this is the lady representing the rule of Mahati. Mahati was a divine gift. Our ancestors conceived the philosophy of knowledge using ancestral spirituality based on Mahati, or the laws of Mahati. The great ancestors became receptors of messages from the netters, which are the divine forces or the divine powers. Our ancestors of the African Nile Valley never thought that there was a separation between man and the universe, or the subjective realm of the unseen and the objective manifestation or manifestation realm of the netters or ancestors. Though they call them dead, they knew that the dead are living. Everything comes from the unseen to the seen via our creative power, hence the call of Ptah, the mansion of Ptah, or the temple of the divine, or the temple of God, which is this physical body, this Africoid, Negroid black body. And after that, it returns from the seen to the unseen. So Mahati plus many other laws were the source of harmony that created such powerful civilization. So we start with the pre-dynastic and early dynastic period, 5,500 years before Common Era. We are told by scientists and other thinkers today that there is a Paleolithic age, which is the period in human prehistory, distinguished by the original development of stone tools that covers over 95% of human technological prehistory. It extends from the earliest known use of stone tools from as far back as 3.3 million years ago. That's when we could trace our ancestors. Now, the pre-dynastic African prehistory of Egypt spans the period from earliest human settlement as they moved up from the down from south right up to the north or along the Nile. The beginning of the early dynastic period around 4,100 before Common Era, starting with the pharaoh Naremera, so-called Nama for some Egyptologists, or Horeha, so-called Menes by others. The pre-dynastic era is traditionally equivalent to the final part of the Neolithic period, beginning in 6,000 years before Common Era. So we know our connection. This is the universal connection with the stars. This is how we connect with the stars of the pharaohs, through the pharaohs. That's why we had pharaonic power. Some notable achievements of ancient Africa. Africa's face. This is unique. This was found in Tutankhamun's burial chambers. You can see that this type of art is unique and beyond mere human. It's divine. See hieroglyphics there. You see the stone. This is it. Ladies and gentlemen, find something better than this from ancient times then we can start to talk. Africans, first, we invented writing, literature, art, architecture, religion, science. These have compelled the people of the world to raise their eyebrows. We also went further. Before that, we had religion and spirituality, which were introduced by ancient Africans. We believed in paradise or Nikadzimu. It has many names, at times called the field of reeds or heaven, in which you would spend your eternity, or the afterlife. After judgment, of course, as you will account for your life on earth according to the laws of Mahati, that is how you are going to be judged. That's the teaching. That's us who discovered all the resurrection, all the stories about Jesus, all the stories in the Quran. Every religion that you can think of with a book or with a belief originated from Africa. The only way to get to paradise is to live an abiding life and to follow the will of the ancestors, the will of the gods, and to live in the land that is most suitable for you to lead such a life. More first, the rights of all. In ancient Egypt, from ancient times, women had same rights as men, but there was a clear distinction of roles. Who plays what role? There were no issues of human rights because everyone had rights, as shown here. We also invented paper and pen, paper from papyrus, and pen and ink, and mathematics and geometry. The ancient Africans exhibited their talent in the field of mathematics and geometry, hence the fantastic buildings all over the earth, the pyramid, the sphinx, the structures that we have already shown, came from our ancestors. And this is part of the Rhind papyrus, the mathematics. You can see all trigonometry, all geometry, all angles, even higher maths. It was all produced by ancient Egyptians around 1650 before Common Era, over 4,500 years ago. Also, Africa's past is glorious. All modern achievements we have today are indirectly indebted to Black people. More first, historiography, where people recorded wars, agriculture and irrigation, navigation, trade and commerce, craftsmanship, systems of administration, political administration, medical science, imutepo, philosophy, postal services, the calendar. You can see this is the key found in Dendera in Africa, the only and first calendar. Don't think about Sumeria and all that. So since we were so powerful, what happened really? What can you and me learn and do today? How then did all this collapse? That's a cardinal question. Let's answer this question using one principle. So-called ancient Egyptian mysteries was in reality an African spirituality. Our super civilization always generated two powerful effects. One, it compelled foreigners or barbarians to raise their eyebrows in envy, jealous, and desire. It is still happening today by all who are still occupying our lands, saying that they are the creators of that, yet the images and the statues tell a different story. Number two, it created complacence and overconfidence within us. Mahati is the holy divine African concept as a personification of truth, justice, social order, and harmony. If maintained, always it breeds political success and natural fertility. This is dependent on the state or political structure or political strength, on Pharaoh and his permanent communication with the divine world, and all the leaders as they communicate with the divine world. You see, here is achievement. Now we come to the problem where the biggest issue can be answered. This is Pharaoh Wahibire. His other name was Apries. He's also called Hofra in Jeremiah 44:30. He is one of those who employed Greeks and other European mercenaries. And here again is one of the culprits of our demise. Pharaoh Amasis. More enemies within. So with the Persians on the corner, Pharaoh Amos or Amasis decided to strengthen his country against an inevitable invasion. He invited more Greeks to trade and settle in Egypt. And this was in violation of the laws of ancient ancestors. They came and settled here at Nukratis. This is the answer to the question. So Pharaoh Amasis was a full Hellen. What is a full Hellen? A Philhellene is a person who loves Greek culture. He granted privileges to certain Greeks, in particular to those Greeks who came to live in Egypt. He gave the city of Naucratis to dwell in. Now listen to this one. To those of them not wishing to settle in Egypt, what did he do? He gave places for them to set up altars and sanctuaries for their gods. According to this, Amasis resettled the Greeks and Carian mercenaries from Stratopeba in Memphis, a holy city where these people in ancient times would be caught and burned on the fire. As his personal bodyguards, you can read Herodotus, he writes that. At the same time, this king is said to have donated Naucratis to the Greek colonists, a settlement. Pharaoh Amasis gave the Greeks control of the port city of Naucratis on the Canopic Plain. He is the top sellout Pharaoh. This is the answer to why our civilization collapsed, because of Pharaoh Amasis of ancient Egypt, our own ruler, our own African brother. So here they are now. You see, they are starting to sacrifice now. They now started, this is where they started to love the cat, which they didn't love. Our power is now oozing out from ancient Egypt into Cyprus, into Asia Minor, into Europe, via Crete. And Plutarch, 45 CE to 120 CE, had this to write about this. Plutarch likewise traces all Pythagorean symbols back to ancient Egyptian origin, and with Diodorus repeats that all the Greek sages, Solon, Thales, Leucocus, Pythagoras, Eudoxus, had visited Egypt and had been in contact with the priests. So this is clear that barbarians came in and they started to flourish. Amasis could be the only pharaoh who was a cynic. Amasis was a Philhellene, as we have already indicated. He made more expensive donation to the principal shrines of Greece, in particular that of Apollo at Delphi. He settled Greeks and Anatolians in Egypt against an ancestral law that prohibited that. In considerable numbers, they came, and Amasis was no longer dependent on recruiting mercenaries. He had them there, but in order for him to maintain status and to maintain that flow, he had to continuously donate to the temples. The Greeks returned the compliment by showing an increasing fascination with all things Egyptian, and both Solon, the poet, and many others have said it. Pharaoh Amasis was an agnostic. He never followed Mahat. Ancient Africans in ancient Egypt had a law restricting immigration of Greeks, and they were punished for infringing this by capital punishment and sacrificing and burning them. As the reign of Amasis came to an end, the Persians, who were knocking at the door through Cambyses, invaded Egypt, and the whole continent was thrown open to pagans. Amasis died 526 before Common Era. When the Persian king Cambyses conquered Egypt, it ended this Saite dynasty and opened all of us to the rule of the foreigner. Here is Cambyses. He entered the palace of Amasis and gave orders to look for the body of Amasis, which had been embalmed. Cambyses says it subjected to every indignity, such as lashing with whips and the plucking of its hairs, until the executioners were weary. At last, as the corpse had been embalmed and would not fall to pieces under the blows, Cambyses ordered it to be burned. This marks the end of the black native rule and ownership of Egypt. Africans who no longer have any one of them who rule from that country even up to today. This is a general timeline, a sad scenario. The answer to why our greatness collapsed is because of the two factors, the foreigner and our own leadership. Before Common Era 670, Pharaoh Psammetichus initiated the study of Greek and employed Greek mercenaries against the Assyrians, set up a camp that stayed in the western delta and allowed the militias to start settling in Naucratis. 570 before Common Era, under Pharaoh Amos II Amasis, the Greeks were allowed to travel beyond the desert, western desert, in the delta. Naucratis became an exclusive Greek trading center, complete with the Greek temples. He cultivated close relations with Greek states to help him against the impending Persian onslaught. Instead of looking to Africa, instead of looking to his divine power, Egypt 525 etc., became a center for Persia and the start of more pronounced Greek immigration into Egypt. 332, Egypt was invaded and plundered by the Macedonians. 305, Egypt ruled by Greek Ptolemaic so-called pharaohs. The death of our Queen Cleopatra, the last Greek ruler of Egypt. And then came the Romans, and after the Romans, the white Arabs. It was prophesied to happen. A time will come when it will seem that in vain the Africans in Egypt or elsewhere have honored their gods with pious mind and with Asudia service, or their holy worship will fail infectiously, will be deprived of its fruits. The gods living the earth will go back to heaven. They will abandon Africa. This land, once the home of sacred liturgies, will be widowed of its gods and no longer profit from their presence. Strangers will fill this country, and not only will they no longer be care for religious observances, but a yet more painful thing, it will be laid down under so-called laws, under pain of punishment, that all must abstain from acts of piety or cult towards the gods. Then this very holy land, home of sanctuaries and temples, will be all covered with tombs and the dead. O Egypt, O Egypt, O Egypt, of your cows only fables will remain, and later your children will no longer believe in them. Nothing will be left but words carved in stone to tell of your pious exploits. This is a prophecy that has been fulfilled, that is being fulfilled. In the period between Alexander and Caesar, the Africans still mummified their dead, but they painted the coffins in Greek style rather than Egyptian. So we see how we bury our dead today. We pluck in a cross, we put in Islamic writing, we do Buddhism. This is exactly what has caused our demise. The influx of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam paid the end of our powerful practice of spiritual science magic. Our religion has tiny remnants today.
We allow the God of evil of this world that has fallen upon us, as they say, they landed on Plymouth Rock, as they say. They landed upon us. But one thing we got to know about ourselves in America is that the time, I would say, let me go back here. Let me go back when he had those up right there. When he was talking about the invasions, I would say that we started coming to America. This is my guest, my educational guest, that we as a people started leaving the land, or the land broke apart, because it was Pangea. We can think of Pangea and see that probably played a big part into why it separated from the core, because all lands were connected at one time. But as we see in Africa today, an ocean has been formed, and right in the middle of it. So it's birthing an ocean on the continent of Africa as we speak now. So that gives some validity. That gives a lot of validity to the Pangea ideology. So does, the people did move around. So I want to say they did travel according to the book I read about, what's that rich man's name? Rich African man. The book I read about him, he talks about some people leaving and going to a new land. They would disappear and they would leave the continent of Africa and they would go to the new land. So we see evidence there. But we do know for a fact that we did have language here. We did trade with Africa. and trade with other places as well from America. There was a people here, definitely here, and it was not the Native Americans. It was a people that were here way before that time. And I would say somewhere in the 525 or in between there and 332 was the time when the people we started migrating. We can call ourselves the children of Egypt or the children of the gypsies because we migrated, uh, either migrated or the Pagina split of the lands departing just brought us down to this region that we're currently living in. Let's continue on. I don't have
305, Egypt ruled by Greek Ptolemaic so-called pharaohs. The death of our queen Cleopatra, the last Greek ruler of Egypt. And then came the Islamic writing. We do Buddhism. This is exactly what has caused our demise. The influx of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam paid the end of our powerful practice of spiritual science magic. Our religion has tiny remnants today in primitive village life in sub-Saharan Africa. It is weak and almost on its last flickers. Conclusion: are you a Christian, a Hebrew Israelite, a black Jew, a Buddhist? Maybe you are a black Muslim following the nation of Islam or Shia or Sunni. You believe perhaps in the Bible or the Quran, but you are black. If yes, don't ask how Africa has collapsed and remains on the ground, trodden by all and sundry. It is our collective action. Our politicians continue in the ways of Wahibire and Amasis. Yet in all the ruckus, you have a duty to rescue your soul. It is an exciting and highly deadly operation. Yes, it can be done. It is an undisclosed way, a powerful secret indeed. If you know this, this is your time. Get in touch. Siabonga, Tatenda, thank you. Priest Teacher Rabbi Elem Dumusulu, Hamiti Hebrew Ethics, Umoya, Mweya is Spirit. Comment and share and subscribe to Hamiti Hebrew Ethics.
Definitely subscribe to this channel. I really love it. I get a lot of things that I've talked about in the past. I can use his research to back up and support what I'm trying to say. And usually you can get a lot of, you can do your research from there. Because what he did was he did an extensive study into ancient Egypt. And plus, probably been there too as well. Where I, go on what I see, what I feel, my intuition, and what I see, which is the logical part, and then intuition, which is the the feeling part, the sensing, the knowing. Logic and the intuition helps you to know things to be a fact. But like I said, Pangea is very, 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 very possible. That's why we're in the region that we are, and we are the children of Egypt. But in the next video, before I have to leave, I'm going to try to get into it real quick because it's a very important video. It's a very important video. And let me get it here. I'm going to get into it a little bit, but I might have to. I know I had it. get into this one real quick. So even if I get into the first few minutes of it, it's still good. You still get the information. And this is a very important video because what did I do? Okay, there it goes. So Cleopatra was not Black. This Iranian that is doing this movie or whatever background this person comes from, it seems like it's an agenda to put our face upon degradation and destruction. And they have been successful at that here in America. But America's going down. I'm proclaiming that America's going down for all the dirty work it has done to me and my people. Let's get into it. Oh, I'm sorry, family. Damn. I didn't share it. Oh,
In the days that followed, Cleopatra the queen seemed to slip away. A prisoner in her own tomb, or possibly her own palace, the accounts vary. She shed her regal air and dressed only in a simple tunic. But she was still as fierce and defiant as ever. When she met Octavian one last time, she spoke directly and bluntly. One of the only direct quotes attributed to Cleopatra, recorded by the Roman historian Livy, was, quoting, "I will not be led in a triumph." Octavian wanted nothing more than to bring Cleopatra back to Rome and parade her around in her defeat, a humiliating march known as a triumph. Cleopatra would have none of it, though. She'd go out on her own terms. But let's go back. Cleopatra was born in 69 BC. Her father, Ptolemy XII, was one of a long line of Egyptian pharaohs who were not actually Egyptian. He and Cleopatra were of Macedonian Greek descent and ruled over the Ptolemaic kingdom, founded in 305 BC by Ptolemy I Soter.
they were colonizers, like colonizers of Africa and colonizers of America. No different. The same thing you see.
Who declared himself pharaoh after a power struggle following the death of Alexander the Great in 323, who had conquered Egypt 10 years prior. The 300 years between Alexander the Great and Cleopatra have become known as the Hellenistic period.
There was nothing great about Egypt at this time, at these times, in these days. That's why our people left.
During this time, Egypt was Greco-fied in a lot of ways, and as a result, Cleopatra's early education was steeped in the tradition of the Greek philosophers. Under the tutelage of Philostratos, she learned about the Greek art of oration, wrote Greek medical works, and had an unlimited access to the vast library of Alexandria, probably the most extensive library in the world at that time. She was one of the few Ptolemaic rulers to learn Egyptian, but she didn't stop there. Cleopatra learned a staggering number of languages, including Ethiopian, Hebrew, Arabic, Syrian, Median, Parthian, Latin, and Troglodyte, in addition to her native Koine Greek. Her abilities as a polyglot made her renowned for being able to converse with people from all over the Mediterranean without the need of a translator.
She was able to manipulate and be evil all over the place and share her degradation and harm other people with the knowledge.
A useful skill if you have ambitions to grow your empire, which she certainly did. But she wasn't a pharaoh yet. It would be several years and a whole lot of drama before she eventually ascended to the throne. Cleopatra was born in a tumultuous time for the Egyptian Empire. The Ptolemaic kingdom was holding on by a thread, and had been for pretty much all 300 years of its history. Rome was quickly becoming the world's leading power, and by 60 BC, Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XII, was in the hot seat. In 58 BC, Rome annexed Cyprus, which had been ruled by Ptolemy's brother, Ptolemy of Cyprus. The Romans accused him of aiding pirates who were wreaking havoc on their shipping routes. Rather than face exile, Ptolemy of Cyprus committed suicide, a decision that proved quite popular for a lot of the defeated rulers around this time. Throughout the whole ordeal, Ptolemy XII remained relatively silent. But with the Egyptian economy in a deep recession, this show of weakness was the last straw. Ptolemy was forced out of Egypt, exiled to the outskirts of Rome with his daughter, an 11-year-old Cleopatra. They found refuge in the villa of Pompey the Great, a powerful Roman general who was then part of the First Triumvirate, a secret three-way alliance between Pompey, Julius Caesar, and Marcus Licinius Crassus, who were conspiring to overthrow the Roman Republic and set up their own form of government. Basically, they wanted to be emperor, but the complex set of checks and balances within the Republic wouldn't allow that.
Don't you see the same between the political scheme of things here in America? We got the Democrats and the Republicans.
So they created this shadowy pact, vowing to help each other consolidate power. Obviously, backstabbing would ensue. Et tu, Brute? At Pompey's villa, a young Cleopatra met Julius Caesar. Seeds were sown for a future romance that would alter the course of history. But it would be a brief visit. With Pompey's help and the help of Pompey's ally, Aulus Gabinius, who was the Roman governor of Syria at the time, Ptolemy regained his throne. In 55 BC, Gabinius invaded Egypt and deposed Berenice IV, who had been sitting on the throne since Ptolemy's exile. Berenice was Ptolemy's daughter, and there was a lot of animosity between the two. Berenice wanted Ptolemy to remain in exile, but Ptolemy's Roman connections proved no match for her. Shortly after Ptolemy retook the throne, he had Berenice and her allies executed. Power took precedence over family, apparently. During Gabinius' invasion of Egypt, a young soldier named Mark Antony made a name for himself. As the Romans marched into Egypt, it is said he met a then 14-year-old Cleopatra, accompanying her father as he returned from exile. Years later, Antony would say that this was the moment he fell in love with this powerful femme fatale. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Ptolemy was back on the throne, but his kingdom was still in trouble. He was in debt up to his neck from paying off all the Roman leaders who helped him win back his throne. He eventually managed to secure valuable trade partnerships with kingdoms in East Africa and India, and over the course of the next 4 years, he built Egypt back into a respectable empire. However, Ptolemy still owed a lot of money upon his death in 52 BC, which was then passed on to Cleopatra. In 52 BC, Ptolemy died and left the keys to the empire and his debt in the hands of Cleopatra. She took them and ran. At this point, it's probably worth mentioning that the Ptolemaic kingdom was full of interbreeding. Brothers and sisters were marrying all the time, in order to preserve the Ptolemaic line over the course of its history. Cleopatra herself was most likely a product of interbreeding, conceived between Ptolemy XII and his sister, the mysterious Cleopatra VI Tryphina, who was somehow obscured from the historical record and of which not much is known. Cleopatra had several siblings. We've already met her sister, Berenice IV, who briefly ruled Egypt until she was executed by her own father. Cleopatra also had two younger brothers, Ptolemy XIII and Ptolemy XIV, and a younger sister, Arsinoe IV. As per her father's wishes, when Cleopatra became pharaoh, she married her brother Ptolemy XIII, and they served.
See, this is why we should be fighting hard, harder than the white Egyptians who don't want a black face put upon Cleopatra. We have more of a reason not to want a black face put on Cleopatra than the white colonizer Egyptians today, who is doing it because he's purely racist and a colonizer. So with that said, true love and peace. Till next time, keep your eyes to the sky and go within.